Hey there, so this is just a follow-up from the last video. I thought I'd put together some considerations to have that can support you during exercise or around exercise if you do experience exercise intolerance due to chronic pain, chronic fatigue, dysautonomia, even pain and fatigue associated with hypermobility. So the first point I would say, which is really important, is to think about saving the spoon. So if you don't know what spoon theory is, I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube videos that can talk about that, and at Active Health we've probably got a video posted around that. But the idea is you only have a certain amount of spoons that you can use for energy, and if you use too many, potentially you're stealing some from tomorrow, and as a result could be increasing your risk for post-exertional malaise and getting that kind of symptom spike in response post-exertionally. So yeah, the idea here is, if you do know you have an exercise intolerance, you're a little bit, rightly so, nervous about that, and you don't want to do any more harm and cause that post-exertional malaise response, I would just say it's really important to think about all the other variables and context of your day. So is there other incidental exercise that you have planned? Maybe you'd scheduled to go for a walk, you wanted to do some cleaning or some stuff around the house. Obviously this is going to be scaled up and down depending on the person, so it's hard to be individual about that. But we just want to limit any of that kind of incidental stuff that we haven't planned for, and allow all of our energy for this, because if we do have an intolerance and we're not sure how we're going to respond to it, we want to make sure that we save and can put our energy towards this. It may also be about planning for the next day to be minimal as well, just in case you do have a kind of a negative response to it, and you do get a bit symptomatic, so that you can allow for that rest and recovery post-exercise. Number two, which is really important, is hydrate and fuel. So drinking plenty of water. I wouldn't be exercising first thing before you've had plenty of water and or electrolytes, especially if you've got dysautonomia. We know how important electrolytes are, or sodium. And also avoid exercising on an empty stomach as well, I would say, if possible. We want to make sure we've got some fuel. Number three would be add SIMs, and so once again, I'm sure we've got videos going into detail around what SIMs and DIMs and SIMs are. So SIMs standing for safety in me. So these are just things that cue or promote safety for you, and this is going to help your nervous system regulate and experience that safety, and potentially assist in the way that your body responds to that activity or exercise in this instance. So think about what these things are going to be for you. So this is going to be individual. I think there's some common ones for people with dysautonomia especially. So obviously a lot of people have a heat intolerance, so avoiding exercising if it's really hot or in direct sunlight. Try and have a nice temperature. Think about comfortable clothing, a soft mat if you have access to it. Maybe you exercise with a friend or a family member that you feel comfortable with, and you've got that company, or like body doubling, that can be helpful as well. Think about listening to your favorite music or podcast as well. You can do those two things at once, and exercise while listening to music. Cool. Number four, we have try to regulate your nervous system and access your parasympathetic rest and digest beforehand. So obviously exercise is some form of a stress on your body. In the right dosage can be a positive stress, and that can create adaptations, and you get stronger and more resilient to exercise. That's the goal here. However, it is a stress on your body nonetheless. So before you exercise, make sure you've had time to regulate and calm before you get into that exercise. This could be diaphragmatic breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, could be a guided meditation. You can do this immediately before and after the exercise as well, and that could also help minimize any post-exertional symptoms you get. Number five would be resting between sets to minimize excessive jump in heart rate. So I'd start at maybe at least a minute, especially if you're noticing that your heart rate is jumping up and maybe you're getting a bit more symptomatic. Have at least a minute. More is totally fine. You could have 2 to 3 minutes between sets, or even longer. That's totally fine. slow and steady. We don't have to get it all done at once. Remember, the goal here is trying to teach our nervous system that exercise is safe and just slowly introduce ourselves to this. Number 6 would be stop with at least 3 reps in the tank of every set. So you're not pushing right to muscular fatigue or failure. You're having at least 3, I would say, if not more. Okay, so over time, the idea is you might be able to increase, hopefully you can increase the volume and the intensity of those exercises so that you can promote more muscular adaptations, and you can start getting stronger and bigger muscles, which is awesome. But then really what we're thinking about in this instance is the aim is to kind of slowly introduce your body to that exercise and more conditioning your nervous system before we're thinking about those more like classic fitness gains adaptations. Number 7 would be monitor your response to that exercise session in the 24 hours after it's completed. We know post-exertional malaise can come delayed, so you really want to look at that whole, even like 24 to 48 hours, just so we can be sure that it was the exercise, that if we do have a response, just to make sure that we can, just to be sure that it's the exercise that's triggered a negative response. Let's try and limit any activity outside of our window of tolerance that we complete in that same like 24 to 48 hours, on the same day or afterwards, like 24 to 48 hours afterwards. If you have bigger things planned that might be outside your baseline, potentially don't exercise. I guess we don't want to exercise as something, like add something on to already bigger 24 to 48 hours and we have a bad response and potentially we blame the exercise, and it could have been the exercise. But at least if we minimize those variables, we can be sure that whatever we've chosen to do exercise wise, that's the thing that's triggered that response by our nervous system. If we do that exercise, we minimize all the other variables, or even if we don't and we tolerate it okay, then we can be pretty sure that that exercise currently is within our baseline, which is awesome. And that means we can continue to do that. And I would generally try and stabilize with that level to be safe for at least another 1 to 2 weeks before you think about increasing, whether that's the volume, so number of repetitions or sets, or the intensity. So I talked about reps in reserve and leaving some in reserve. You can start challenging yourself a bit more and getting a little bit closer to that kind of muscle fatigue or failure. But be very careful with that. Like I said, the primary objective at the moment is just trying to teach your nervous system or show your nervous system that activity is safe, and kind of build consistency and establish that baseline, and over time we can just creep that up and build up our tolerance from there, and start to challenge ourselves. Cool, thanks for watching.